You have to unmute yourself, David, you moron. There you go. Here he is. Look at
Hey!
it. Oh, Darren, you know how this works. I'll unmute you. Hello, Darren.
Hello, Simon. Wow.
Remember,
You're
no swearing, my friends. No swearing.
not taping this.
We are. We're recording it, and it's going live to Facebook if I can get my arse round. So, do remember that because we can't delete it. Okay.
Okay.
So that means I've got to behave, yeah?
Absolutely, Darren. Good day to our guest, who we will introduce our guest very shortly, right?
Oh, okay. You sit there and wait then, Darren. We'll come back to you.
Darren, you wait. Pretend like we're not here.
Okay.
Simon.
Yeah.
Hi, how are you?
Hello, Dave. Now's not the time to flirt.
Who's that bloke at the bottom with the beard that's just staring at us?
The big Aussie bear, that's what he is. He's lovely.
Do you want to introduce our guest?
Okay, let me do that. This is Darren Hutchins of the fantastic, and is it still fastest growing, real estate chain in Australia.
We'd like to think so, Simon. We'd like to.
That's unusually honest. Normally you just bullshit me for ages. Yeah, so shall we frame it? The first thing we're going to do is, you are the first, you're our virgin, in all sense of the word, our virgin on the lockdown lowdown series of interviews with our Aussie brethren. So well done for representing your country.
Okay, so there's a bit of pressure on back here.
Yeah, absolutely is. Yeah, that's exactly right. So don't ruin it for Tom Panos and Josh and everyone else there. You know, this is not like you did on the Gold Coast.
And
now, behave, Whaley, behave.
So, okay.
Darren, before I ask you all about your business and your fantastic growth, tell me, how did you meet Simon Whale and why?
So it goes back about 7 or 8 years ago, David, and Josh Fegan, who's our coach. We started our business in 2010. Josh has been with us since February of 2011. So he's been a massive part of our business since pretty much day one, or a few months in. Sent me a message one night: Darren, meet Simon. Simon, meet Darren. And let's just say it's probably wiped about 5 years off my life. We've had some extraordinarily good times. And I've actually seen him face down a few times up on the Gold Coast. So
you've helped
that union. It fascinates me because I think Josh Fegan notoriously gets up at 5 a.m., goes for a jog. He's clean living. He doesn't drink too much. He doesn't do this. He doesn't do that. He sleeps in a cryogenic chamber that keeps him looking exactly the same age for the past 10 years, right? And yet Simon Whale, who flies in the face of all of that. Look at him. I mean, just look at him.
It was Hutch. It was his birthday, wasn't it? Which was a little known secret at the weekend. What was it?
On Sunday, yeah.
Was it his 25th?
No. I think he just ticked into those magical late 30s, 38.
Oh wow! So, yeah,
we'll throw him under the bus.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the main thing for Josh's, which always drives him apoplectic, is that I keep telling him how I'm going to outlive him, because he's obviously he overthinks stuff, and let's face it, I live in the moment and I'm quite optimistic. So it's well known that us people live longer than everyone else, isn't it?
And the other people.
Now, Whaley, can I just say, and David, I don't know whether you're aware of this, but the super spreader in the background there, Whaley, he came out for my Bucks. He came out for my Bucks there about 5 or 6 weeks ago.
I know exactly what you're about to say. There were 0 cases in Australia before he arrived, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely. We're now at about 6,500. I think it's all because of you, Simon. So,
Yeah,
you know, and then he panicked. He panicked, went home, and gave it to everyone else.
You're virtually out. Let's just talk about coronavirus. Such, I mean, not obviously like you did, but you're actually almost out of it in Australia, aren't you? So you were later into it, and aren't they potentially talking about lifting the lockdown?
So look, I think we've been a bit lucky. You know, I've been watching from afar what's been happening in the UK and right across Europe, and then throughout the US. And look, I think we've had about 6,500 cases here. We've had about 75 deaths. we've really dodged a bullet. So we've been very lucky. Our friends across the ditch are in stage 4 lockdown still. But again, they've got a prime minister that's batshit crazy. So,
and what do you put it down to? What are the I mean, apart from it, can't just be luck, can it? Or is it
Vegemite?
Is that Vegemite?
It's a beautiful spread. Look, I think good governance. We shut our borders pretty quickly. We got on top of things pretty quickly. Except for a few cruise ships lobbing, loaded up with corona and everything else. We're still in stage 3 here, so basically you can only go out for certain essential items and to exercise and go to work if you're permitted to work, if you're an essential service, which we're luckily an essential service here in real estate. So we've been a little bit lucky. We've had a few. We've got an interesting government structure here. So we're governed by the Liberals at a federal level and the Labor Party here in Victoria. I think we're about the last standing Labor government at a state level. And our bloke's gone a little bit mad. I think we've got 100 active cases still in Victoria, 7.5 million people. I mean, I'm probably more hope of getting hit by a bus than getting coronavirus here at the moment. So.
Yeah, we should just establish you're famously on the Genghis Khan side of the scale, aren't you, in terms of politics? So. Which is why we get on so well.
I won't start. I'll leave the socialists alone for the moment. So, you're about the most. If you're a socialist, I'm Catholic, but I'm not, unfortunately. But look, I think by and large we've been very lucky. We've been very lucky, and in saying that, we're in for some turbulence ahead. I think we're all accustomed to knowing that.
I mean, when we first met, actually, as we said, it was ages ago, obviously. And when you guys used to talk about the last recession being the GFC, the Great Financial Crisis, and I used to kind of guffaw because, I mean, you didn't technically even go into recession, did you, Australia, famously, because you were doing a lot of deals with the Chinese over mining and stuff. You've been on the back of, what is it, a 20-year, 30-year market, relatively positive market?
Yeah, look, we've had, I've been in the industry 17 years, so during that time we've had a few ups and downs. I'd say probably the last 2 to 3 years have been the toughest, and we had a banking royal commission here where they started putting the screws on lending.
Yeah.
So so we had the royal commission into banking, and that sort of put the handbrake on, and then all of a sudden we looked like the government was going to get tipped out. So it was about to get tipped out, and then Scott Morrison got himself off the canvas, and somehow the common sense prevailed, and we didn't end up with a crazy Labor Bill Shorten government. God knows where we'd be if he had been in now, but. I think famously,
Hutchins, you were laughing us over Brexit, but you guys were doing a pretty good routine of hold my pint, changing your prime minister every single week, weren't you?
Oh, look, we had a run. I think, look, if you look at it at the moment, we've probably, well, we had Julia Gillard, we had Kevin Rudd, Julia Gillard, Kevin Rudd, then we had Turnbull, then we've had Scott Morrison. And Scott Morrison probably won the unwinnable election.
Yeah.
And it was interesting. Last year when he won the election in May, the change overnight in our market was significant. We just noticed that buyer inspections took off again. The confidence was back in the market. We were sort of coming out of the back of that Royal Commission, and the market took off again. So we had a market that was taking off again. Then all of a sudden, half the country was on fire, and now all of a sudden we've had Corona. So
you've had a few bad hits, haven't you? But I mean,
it sounds like they've had a Boris bounce of their own.
Boris bounce.
Hutch liked Boris. Hutch,
He's alive. He's back.
Who knows? It's hard to tell.
Whaley thinks it's a clone. Darren, your neighbours in New Zealand have done even better with Corona than you guys. Obviously, it's a much smaller place and a much smaller population to manage. But a lot of people are very impressed with their governance and the lady that's leading the country there. What are your thoughts?
look, she won an
Look,
election.
it would help for my wife if you
Yeah.
would just say that women running a country leads
It's good.
to better governance.
I'm
Okay? Thanks.
I'm all for good governance, David. I'm all for good governance, and I'm all for proactivity and everything else. Look, I don't know a great deal about her. She she got in on the back of a load of preferences. She was the most unpopular vote and still got up. Work that out. I don't understand how some of these political scenes work out. But when you speak to the locals over there, they don't like her that much. So, and look, it's interesting. But I talk regularly to some people across the ditch, and one guy said the other day, he said to me, it's crazy. He runs a motel and he's also into commercial. He does commercial transactions around hotels, motels, petrol stations, business transactions. And so he's effectively a commercial real estate agent.
Yeah.
But he said, I've got a motel that I'm running at the moment. It's $28,500 a month, break even.
Yeah.
New Zealand dollars. And he said, so far at the 20th, I've taken $600 this month.
Yeah, so awesome.
But, and he said the lockdown is crazy, Darren. He said where I am in Nelson, there's not an active case. It could have been. I think personally, it could have been handled a lot better. If you lock down prominent areas where there is cases of coronavirus, by all means. But when you've got a situation where Nelson's north of Christchurch, and it's about a 4-hour drive, it's right up the north of the South Island. There's no cases there. It's crazy.
I think it's really hard, as you said. It's difficult with hindsight, but they do. The one thing they seem to have got wrong is the deadliness of it, because of course, famously, obviously, it is hitting older generations particularly hard. But whilst it still does affect a few outliers in the smaller ones, it's relatively less dangerous. And so, to go for this for what is. I think there's about 70,000, 60,000 people would die anyway around the world globally every single day. There's only 180,000 that have died from coronavirus to date. So on the basis of it, for 3 days, that seems, 3 days normal deaths. It's insane. What we will never know, of course, is if they haven't had those restrictions, what would have happened. And that's the difficulty, isn't it, I suppose?
Yeah, true. Look, I think at the end of the day, we've been very lucky. We've been lucky through the GFC. We really only copped a little bit of the tail end of that.
Lucky in the Ashes.
We've been very lucky in the Ashes. So, world's of pain for you guys, but that's another story.
It's good to hear.
There's also a famous Ashes that occur every year at ARIC, but I don't think you've watched it either.
So David, just so you know, Hutch did. He's the one who brought the pain, so I'm going to deliver it. He did manage to land himself in hospital twice post ARIC after having had a week with me. So he's he's a big lad, but the bigger they are, the harder they fall. Darren, I forgot, by the way, I couldn't find a hat with corks on, but I did find this little beauty for you. So.
Now, Simon, I'm sure this interview is going to get a little bit more serious shortly, but that'd have to be the greatest waste of 15,000 quid I've ever seen over your back shoulder there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Is that just a piece of art, or is it some sort of piece of art, or what is it?
It's nice. I think it's a screensaver. That's all it does.
It's a monument to male health.
Someone said it moved, but I haven't figured that out yet.
So Dave, the last time I had Simon in my house was about a bit over 12 months ago, and he walked through the door with 8 bottles of red wine and walked out sideways. So,
let me tell you a few things about Simon Whale at home, though. I know that on the international stage, he plays the big sort of playboy rock star image, always on, always party. He lives in a very conservative suburb where all the locals eat sour bread and squashed avocados, and he's drinking tea. He's married to a school teacher, or not married, but
I am not married.
He's still single, ladies.
Cease and desist.
But he's, this guy lives a normal life, like more normal than you, mate.
Yeah.
This is
just like Shipman was was just a doctor.
He's hiding in plain sight.
And I've always been trying to work out how capitalism and socialism go hand in hand. It's got me beat, David.
It works very well. It's that you don't become a socialist and give all your money away. That's a very different thing.
I'll tell you how Simon Whale does socialism is that he understands that he'd like to house the homeless. He also understands that Hilton Hotel run a really good reward program. And so what he's done in the past is he's taken a homeless person, checked them into the Hilton Hotel, who are horrified by it.
Yeah.
It's what the homeless people of Manchester refer to as the biggest towel stealing heist of this century.
He basically cleaned out the entire mini bar, somewhat unsurprisingly, and nicked the gown. So some tramp in the city centre is still walking around with a Hilton dressing gown.
Because socialism is lovely. It just doesn't work.
I actually heard a whisper he pinched Peter Knight's credit card and put it on that, though, hadn't he?
Long-term fan of the show, Peter Knight. Hutch, just going back to that, I think that's interesting what you said about the New Zealand Prime Minister, because, famously, we always see these Prime Ministers, presidents, and everyone was fawning over Trudeau, weren't they, from Canada, and yet obviously the voting population saw it very different, don't they? Quite often they don't get the internal support that we all see them as the characters they are.
Yeah, look, speaking to locals, she ain't that well embraced. So there's a train of thought she'll run the country into the ground and move on. So that's their biggest concern.
Oh, we've lost him. That's it. That's okay. It's just me and you alone at last. We're always the last standing.
Anyway. The Josh Fegan water's going well, Simon.
Oh, is it? Yeah, it's too early for me, as I said. So, talk to us. One thing I'd like to get a feeling from you today is obviously when we first met, were you 3 or 4 offices? It was the core offices, wasn't it? When I first came over.
So for your viewers, Dean O'Brien and myself, we started the business back in October 2010.
Yeah.
We opened an office. Oh, that was in Berwick in Victoria. So we opened our second office in it was August of 2011, which was Narre Warren, an adjoining suburb. Yep. Then we opened up Cranbourne after Narre Warren, which was in September of 2012. So from there,
sorry, Hutch, just so we understand for people who obviously us Brits who barely know where we are in our own country. So you're South Melbourne suburbs, aren't you? So you're not.
This is the southeast of Melbourne. So you're basically southeast, outer suburbs, roughly about 40 kilometres out of Melbourne.
Yeah.
So
and it's an area where you're getting massive. They're laying infrastructure, new schools, whole new towns. Pretty much every single year, aren't they? It's a very busy area at the moment in terms of development.
It is, and you've picked up on it when you've been out here. That you drive down a road and go, "Oh, I remember this," but there was nothing here. So,
literally amazing.
So a lot of growth. We're in an area called the City of Casey, and the City of Casey is the fastest growing municipality in Australia. So, So basically, we opened Berwick, Cranbourne, Narre Warren in 3 years.
Yeah.
From there, we met a guy, and it was just by fluke. I used to live in a beachside suburb called Chelsea, and I was over there one day looking for a development site for a client, and there was a board on the property on a vacant block near the train line, near the shops, and Stavros Ambadzidis, and I rang him. And I'll never forget the conversation went exactly like this. "Hi, Stavros, Darren Hutchins, O'Brien Real Estate." He goes, "You're Hutchie." And I said, "Yeah, that's me. You're Dino's partner." And I said, "That's me." And he goes, "I've got Dino's house in the market." So anyhow, a little bit of banter back and forth. And we caught up the next day and we were having a chat because he was with a prominent franchise group here. And look, my understanding of him, he was heavily involved in that group. And when I asked him the question, I said, "How's that particular group going for you?" He said, "No good, and I'm out." I'm on my way. I'm going to move on. So we caught up the next day. We had a bit of lunch, and the rest is history. We then franchised.
Yeah.
So Stavros come on board as part of that franchise body, and we grew it out. Well, over the last few years, we've grown out to 30 offices. We have closed 3. We have closed 3 down. We're now sitting at 27, but
I think
we closed.
When we were talking there, Darren, one of the interesting things and one of the challenges of franchise, some of those as well, I think you've been proactive in sort of removing from the group because they weren't hitting your values or the numbers that they needed to.
Look, we've got a value set, Simon, that we is very important to our brand. So family, we spend more time with each other than we do our own family. So we look at the people within our brand as part of our family.
That's why I could never be part of the O'Brien franchise. They can stay there.
Mutuality is another one of our values. So treat people how you want to be treated yourself.
Yeah.
Realizing potential. We want to see our people realize their true potential. Embrace change. I think real estate at the end of the day moves at such a frenetic pace that you've got to be able to move quickly and embrace change as it happens. Like we've embraced more change probably over the last month than I've seen in 17 years of real estate. So, and
do you think those are lasting changes?
Look, there's certain things I think, David, that'll come out of this, and I'll talk to you about some of the things that we've done. But I think at the end of the day, there's certain things. Zoom meetings. Look, I think a lot of people have sort of got to a point where they're sick of, jumping on Zoom meetings. I think there's an impersonal part to the Zoom meeting. Look, we had a meeting the other day, and part of what we're working on at the moment is an auction platform that we can roll out. And our first Saturday of auctions is this weekend. So, I'm on a Zoom meeting the other day trying to get this thing out of the ground. And in the end, I said, look, this is crap. Why don't we all just socially distance, and why don't we all get into your boardroom and get around the boardroom table? I think I made the comment at the time. I said, there's 100 active cases in Victoria. I'm sure none of us have got it, but if we do the right things, we'll get an outcome. And we all jumped in the room. We're in there for a couple of hours, and we got the outcome that we needed. But I just felt that whole Zoom thing was missing the human element.
I've been saying to people, anyone who'll listen, is everyone keeps talking about these massive changes, and we're all going to be just doing digital meetings. I don't think anyone's going to be looking at Zoom when the lockdown stops for a few months, are they? We're going to be loving the ability to get back in front of people and valuing. I think really valuing that face-to-face business as well.
Yeah, so when this whole thing happened, look, I was very lucky. I got married on the 21st of March.
Congratulations, by the way, my friend.
So lucky, mate.
Sorry,
so lucky.
I was incredibly lucky, David. Simon flew out on after.
If I'd have been there, there's a good chance it wouldn't have gone ahead. Is there really?
I was upset.
Does anybody object? Me.
He wasn't there for the whole ceremony, were you, Simon?
Didn't get to. I had to fly back beforehand, so I did.
That is a true mate. Somebody that will travel all the way across the world for a few drinks, but doesn't turn up at your actual wedding. That's superb.
Yeah.
Look, I think he achieved everything he wanted to, David. We had a great stag night. I know you guys call it stag night, but we had a fantastic stag night. Come the Monday, there was a bit of panic. We took him for a bit of lunch, and I've been a member of a prominent Melbourne golf club for 29 years, and I've never ever been cut off yet. And we got cut off due to Simon Whale. So
yeah, that was bad. And then you put me back on a flight, and I didn't wake up till I got back to Dubai. But anyway, that's enough of that.
So anyway,
yeah,
but basically we got married on the 21st. A little bit of recovery time on the Sunday, and then everything. There was a great deal of discussion around total lockdown, no real estate, no inspections, no face-to-face contact with anyone. That was all bandying around very quickly. So they put stage 3 in pretty much on the Monday. So there was no honeymoon or any of that sort of thing. It was pretty much business as, we're in turmoil. We're in a hell of a lot of turmoil for quite a while. And we had to pivot very quickly. So, Zoom meetings become part of our day-to-day.
I'm so sorry, mate. I thought he was talking about the marriage now.
No, no.
Actually gone back to business.
No,
They
so-
got married on the 21st. They were locked down, and they've had to speak to each other ever since. It's been awful.
That's
but-
how it is.
Look, Dean O'Brien, my business partner at Stavros, you know, we had to pivot very quickly. And Josh Fegan, who's our trainer, he's been phenomenal through this. I know you guys respect him a hell of a lot.
I think what we like about Josh is that he's got this remarkable energy. So I have obviously listened to Panos. Troy Malcolm gets a bit of coverage over here. People like Matt Steinweed and who's the other guy with the supposedly large gambling bill? What's his name? I forget his name. But
we're streaming to Facebook here.
Oh, sorry. So anyway, allegedly. But basically, I listened to all of that stuff, and a lot of it's very informative, and there's a lot of energy. But I think what Josh brings to the table genuinely is I have never sat in a room and seen Josh will go from table to table. And if he spots that you're sleeping, even for a second, he'll wake you up. He'll go, "What do you think about that? Isn't that remarkable?" And it'll just force you to go, yeah. And he keeps the crowd going. And so I like that with Josh because he challenges you.
Yeah, I think, David, it's a really good point there. One of the things I wanted to understand from you is we're lucky. Josh has been coming over here now for many years. Obviously, he really kick-started the prospecting, if you like, craze, much as it should have been a core skill, but that's separate. What I wanted to know is, what's it like, Hutch, having somebody like Josh in your... I mean, over here, they must just, you know, people are just so envious because you actually have him in on a monthly basis, don't you? So how does that relationship work? Obviously, with you, it'd be more a mentoring style thing. But what does he actually do at those monthly sessions with yourselves?
Look, it's probably a fair bit of recalibration. Like a lot of our people have seen it over and over and over again. So I liken it to football or soccer or whatever you want, you know, elite sport. You don't just train once to go out for battle. You train multiple times to go in for one day of battle. And Josh, you know, keeps our team sharp. We're very lucky. We are blessed. I comfortably believe he's the best in Australia, and I comfortably believe he's probably the best in the world at what he does. You know, he's a phenomenal trainer, speaker, coach. He keeps our team really on their toes. And the beautiful thing is he walks into a room of 120, 130 people throughout the organisation. He knows them all by name. He takes their phone calls whenever they ring in. You know, I'm very lucky. I speak to Josh a couple of times a day. And, you know, he's one of my best mates. But, you know, it's just the recalibration factor, the care factor, you know, the fact that he's there for our team, he's there for our people. And more so through this, he's been absolutely first class, phenomenal. And, you know, so, you know, some of the things that we've been doing with Josh, we've been having weekly directors meetings with Josh. We've been doing weekly sales training, Zoom meetings with Josh. You know, he's been there. He's been there and he's been at the forefront of this whole thing. His whole directive has been phenomenal. His whole, I suppose, vision for coming out of this has been phenomenal. And, you know, he's really been an integral part of where we're at right at the moment.
This is sounding more like a best man speech, mate. So you're really... I'm not surprised, of course, and I am very envious.
I do have a little bit of footage where he teared up at my wedding. So I can't share that, but anyway.
Yes, yes, you can. Get it.
So can I ask you a question? Obviously, the markets are very different both here and Australia, and in terms of your processes, in terms of your sales processes, that we'll get to that in a minute. But just to drill down to the micro, there is a lot of noise at the moment coming out of different corners in our market anyway, to do with portals and CRM systems. So one of the CRM systems that we've seen raise its head, in fact, I think one of my guys did a demo with them the other day, was Rex, who I think are from your side of the water there. What CRM do you use? What do you look for in a CRM system?
We use AgentBox.
Okay.
So during the journey, we've had a couple. We've the one that we started with is one of the majors. I won't name them, but we then moved on to another one, and we've had Agent Box within the business for the best part of 7 or 8 years now. So Agent Box is now, I believe, owned by Rebit.
Yeah,
Right.
So yeah,
you're
all
a
about
big,
I think I broke the deal, didn't I?
yeah, 15% on it. Yeah, you're a big fan of Box and Dice, aren't you? I seem to remember. That's
We did have Box and Dice, and look, at the end of the day, everyone likes different systems for different functionality. But I think what we look for is ease and convenience.
yeah.
Yep.
Simplicity. Because, quite frankly, I find that agents probably only use 5 to 10% of any database systems, functionality. So
that's also down to training, isn't it? And
absolutely. And look, to Agent Box's credit, they probably have 90% of the best agents in Australia use it. So I think that's a pretty good endorsement of their product.
To be fair, that was the reason we approached Eddie. It was one of the last things that I was involved in.
I told you to approach Eddie, Simon.
You what?
Hey, I told you to approach Eddie.
Yeah, but you told me everything. You told me to go to the bookies. You told me to bet on that horse. There's loads of things you do.
All right, lads.
When you get serious, man.
This isn't going to end well. I'm going to move us on from CRM now. We're going to go straight into portals. So obviously, over here, I don't know if you follow any of the UK news, but we have had, we've obviously had coronavirus shut down the country. But as soon as we went down into lockdown, a lot of the agents started to worry about how they will be able to conduct business, because basically things were going to grind to a halt. And as an instant reaction to that, we started to look to the industry's biggest suppliers to see what they would be doing for the agents in terms of cutting them a bit of a break and some slack. And our biggest portal over here, I think it's probably you've got a version of it over there. But
Realestate.com, yeah.
Yeah, so yourrealestate.com is our Rightmove. And Rightmove have famously handled this entire thing. I mean, it's like a textbook example of how to piss off and alienate all your customers at once. And it just goes from bad to worse. So I'll fill you in. Initially, when we were all told we were going to be shut down, Rightmove said, "Okay, guys, £345 of your bill, and the average bill is about 1,500 quid per branch. About £345 of that, you're going to be able to defer that, and you'll only have to pay it us back in 3 months' time." And that was what they initially came out with, which would have been okay. But the agents were then asked that if they wanted to take advantage of this, they would need to prove to Rightmove that they had the money to pay it. So you had to send them a copy of your pipeline or bank account details. It became very, very, very ridiculous, and it united all the agents against Rightmove very quickly. So they did an about turn, and about a week later, they came out with another version of a plan in which actually this was quite generous. They deferred, I think, 75% of the, not deferred it, completely wiped out 75% of the bill. It's a straight off discount. You don't need to apply for it. You don't need to prove that you can pay it. It's just going to be there in 3 months' time, which was, a bit of saving grace. Just when you thought they may be out of the water on that, this morning they've that Rightmove issue a press release saying that they're going to be taking advantage of the government's loans to large businesses because they need the money. It's part of their survival strategy. And it's once again reunited all the agents. There is now a petition to Parliament going around the agents this morning, demanding that government stop Rightmove from taking advantage of taxpayers' money. So I actually don't believe there's much else you could do in terms of PR to help Rightmove dig that pit even deeper, because they're in there. But how important are the portals to you guys? What have they been doing for you, and what's your attitude towards them?
Look, I wear two hats, so I've got to be a bit careful what I say here, because I'm sure they'll pick up on it. I'm sure I'll get a clip along the way. But look, so if I go back 5 weeks ago to the Monday straight after our lockdown started here, that was the Monday when it was all coming out that we're going to be locked down and everything else. At a corporate level, we jumped on the front foot. We started having conversations with portals. We had conversations with agent box, and it was around protecting and basically recession-proofing the businesses as much as we could. So it was all about reducing subs. It was about trying to get some relief right across the board. And I'd go as far as saying, with the exception of 2, all our suppliers were fantastic. So to give you an idea, one of the phone calls that I was probably the most proud of, I rang Gavin Stewart from Active Pipe, who's also big over in the UK, I believe. I rang Gavin and I said, Gav, and he goes, Hutchie, I know why you're ringing. This is on the Monday. And he said, I know why you're ringing, 50% off for the next 3 months. And if it needs to be 6, it'll be 6. So their subs, they cut them automatically, didn't even have to have a conversation. And it was in what I would term as being very Australian. We get behind our people and we help our people through things and we support our people, and that's what we do. It's the Aussie way. Yeah. So the 2 that we struggled with was Agent Box. We've had some harsh words, okay. And to use someone that Simon said he put on the map, but I think he might have put Simon on the map. Peter Rowland, his famous comment was, "Never waste a good recession," to keep your suppliers on their toes. So, yeah. And that was a comment that he made when he was speaking at ARIC one year. Obviously Peter's a legend of the UK market.
Absolutely, still is. Yeah.
So, I've got that video. I'll share that video as well, where you said that you put a few of these famous people on the map, Simon. I'll share that with you, David. I'll send it through Facebook. You can have some fun with that one. But no, look, the spirit was very good. But when I come back to the conversation I had with realestate.com, now I'll paint the picture here with realestate.com. Our average listing fee, so to put a listing on in the outlying suburbs of Melbourne, is $1,595. So it's effectively 797 quid.
Per property per month, or?
Per property for the first 3 months now. So it's 3 months.
Okay.
It starts as a premier listing, sorry. So it's a premier listing. Then it comes down at the end of the 3 months. So it rotates through the system. 15 days, it goes straight back to the top. 15 days back to the top. 15 days back to the top. At the end of the period, it's basically back to the next one down. So, which is a highlight listing, standard listing. So their position was, and that was $1,595. Some of the areas that we work in are anywhere up to $3,500 to $4,000 per listing.
And that goes up. So somebody like Matty Hayson up in the lovely, is it Balmain? They might be paying $5,000 as well.
No, they might be $3,500 to $4,000. Yes. Yeah.
So, but Darren, in terms of what you're paying for over there, a lot of your costs can be defrayed by vendor paid advertising. Is that something that is a daily part of your business?
Correct. But the way I look at it, David, is that we've still got an obligation to keep them on their toes, because and look, the conversation I had with realestate.com, I went back with Stavros. We had a Zoom meeting with them and the state manager. That was 4 weeks ago. I'm still waiting for an outcome. All their position was that we will, if it's listed now and it doesn't sell within the next 6 months, we'll give you a free premier upgrade. Now, the problem that we've got at the moment from a vendor paid advertising perspective is there's not a lot of cash around to put properties on the market. And yeah, I actually said to them, I said, guys, the Aussie way, in my opinion, would be to slash that listing fee by half, give our vendors an opportunity, and stop. There's a bit of a push here in Australia at the moment for properties to be launched off market, through client websites. Yeah. And try and sell them to the existing database because of the cost. And I said, guys, you're basically feeding the off-market piece. So, if we have less listings coming to the market that's going purely on the off-market platform, it's less money you're getting your hands on. Wouldn't you be better off having the lion's share of the market coming through your portal for 3 to 6 months?
That is so interesting.
So their position was, you know what, your monthly offer sub will cut by 50%, but that's all they've really done. They've come up with a few little ticklers here and there. We've got 3 major portals here. So we've got realestate.com, Domain, which is owned by Channel 9. So Domain is probably number 2 in Victoria.
International.
Sorry?
That News International.
Channel 9, which was previously Rupert Murdoch, I think they're still part of Murdoch.
Oh.
But I think they're. I'm not 100% certain. Yeah. So
I mean, you were kind enough when you invited me over to sit in on essentially a realestate.com account managers meeting, and it was all your key staff members there. And you just plonked me into the back, and we sat there and pretty much giggled and laughed as these account managers were torn the greatest of holes by your staff, because they made the point that, you know, in one particular phrase, you're absolutely killing us guys here, because you quite rightly said, although they have essentially passed over a large majority of the cost to the vendors to pay themselves, you know, it's still coming out of the same pot. And you know, if it's $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, you know, these aren't people. A lot of these people selling their homes aren't people on $200,000, $300,000. If they're in £50,000, £60,000 salary a year, that's a bloody big slug of their annual salary, isn't it? Just to get a listing on a website, and that really resonated for me in terms of, you know what, because I think the dynamic you've got to understand here, David, is from my understanding, and tell me if I'm wrong here, Hutch, but they started off charging the agents in exactly the way that realestate.com did. They gradually introduced the ability for, you know, to charge this across to the vendors, or essentially it was charged across. At the same time they dropped the costs for the agent, they were increasing the costs for the vendors to pay it there. And at that stage, it wasn't that much of an issue, but it's gone so far north now that it's totally out of kilter.
You know what's interesting about that, and I realised when Darren was talking about it earlier, we live in a marketplace here that's very different. In fact, Rightmove or the portals in general may have actually caused agents to regress slightly. So our marketplace has suffered from the fact that agents are not trying hard enough to actually sell properties within their own database. What they are trying to do, they shove it online on Rightmove. There's a number of different reasons why they do that. One of them is that they've become lazy. The other thing is that we're trained to channel all of our social media emphasis and everything all back to Rightmove, so that your statistics then go up. Because the Rightmove say, look, when you walk into a house and you want to go and speak to a vendor and they ask you why should they be using you, one of the reasons is that you take out this chart and it says, I've got #1 views on Rightmove, and this is the kind of way that the portals have kind of trained us to keep them in house. But what's interesting is that with you guys, you've got that tipping point where it could become too expensive. That actually what will happen is, as a result of that, this underground off-market way of selling properties may emerge. So that's what you mentioned before. But over here, we don't see that. It's not become expensive enough to encourage agents to actually get off their asses and do the work themselves and sell it on their own database.
Look, I think I've got a couple of different trains of thought on this, David, because if I sit and I look at our campaigns at the moment, they range anywhere from $3,500 through to about $7,000 or $8,000. And the biggest slug in that campaign is realestate.com. So to give you an idea, we look at professional photography, we do professional floor plans, professional video, and especially more so right at the moment. So, you know, all of a sudden there you're looking at about $600. Then you've got a signboard, an 8x6 photo board out the front is $350. There's $1,000. So that's before we even launch online. Then we've got some copy, you know, some ad copy or whatever the case is. So, you know, you're talking to go to market with brochures, everything else is about $1,500. Then you whack realestate.com on, there's $3,000. So automatically you're at $3,000. Then you've got, as I mentioned, Domain. So Domain is number 2, and then you've got Homely. So Homely are the big mover in the Australian marketplace. They're really having a go, and they are, Simon. They've got a positioning in the market that they want to have everything they possibly can on their site, and they want to have as much on and visible, or have more property on the market with Homely than the others. So, and their whole model has been around ownership being owned by the agents or agency.
Okay, I didn't know that was the model. Okay.
That's interesting. So would you say, I know you wear a couple of hats you mentioned before. I've not asked you what those hats are, but I'm presuming one of them's a pink cowboy hat. But
no, definitely not.
Moving on from that, as an agent, then, do you feel, because I'm on 3 portals over here, and if you ask me what each portal does differently, and is one portal better at something than another, the answer to that is no. It's where the public go. So really, most of our public have been trained over the years to like Rightmove. That's the number 1. And then some of them will go to Zoopla, and then we have On the Market, which is like an agent sort of own thing. But there's no real loyalty, and I would go so far as to say we have seen probably the last of the innovations brought out by these portals, because I don't think there's very much more that they could give us. So what, in your opinion, makes a better portal, the best of the portals?
Look, I think realestate.com, where they captured so much of the market, was they had significant budgets. They could really promote heavily. See it first on realestate.com, see it on realestate.com. There was a lot of national advertising and everything else. So I think the consumer was automatically driven there through the, see, what's the old saying? You see it more than 3 times, it gets grown into your head. So, they spent a lot of money, and look, I come back to the meeting I had with them, and Stav, to his credit, Stavros. So you asked what hats we wear, okay? Yeah. We're business owners, we're agents, and Stavros, Dean, and Dean O'Brien and myself are corporate directors of the franchise business. So in that meeting, Stav actually made the comment. He said, guys, you've got to be very careful here, because our budgets are getting to a tipping point, as Simon alluded to, where if it tips over the edge and our vendors aren't in a position to afford it, the affordability factor's gone. And especially more so now, where there's nowhere near as much cash as what was around 3 months or so back. Yeah. You've got to be very careful here. And Stav made the valid point. I come back to what you said about Rightmove before, and their positioning with the agents at the moment. Yeah. Realestate.com isn't loved by the agents. And I actually made the comment to them. I said, guys, imagine if you did the Aussie thing and you went back and you cut your listing fee by half. Okay, you've had record hand-over-hand profits for the last 10 years, cut it by half. Imagine the credibility you'd win back with the agents, because don't forget, as agents, we're at the coalface. We're sitting here, it's now 9:20 here at night. Most nights we're sitting in someone's lounge room selling their product. Yeah. We're their sales team. We're the ones that are out there actively pushing it and everything else. So I said, imagine the credibility you'd win back. Stav's comment at the end was, he said, guys, remember 2 things. We had a business here called Blockbuster Video. Yeah. Which was massive. It was on every corner.
Still got my membership card.
Yeah. So you've had it in the UK. What happened to Blockbuster? And the other thing is, what happened to Kodak? They thought they were invincible, and they're now no longer.
And it happened quite quickly, didn't it? And it
happened quickly. Yeah. So I think if these portals aren't prepared to get on board and support the people that support them, and we're the people that are at the coalface day in, day out, that are actively pushing their product.
Well, it's more than that. So obviously you're selling their product, but without you, they've got nothing to sell. So they need your data, your data that you're gathering.
So if I look at Rightmove and then I look at Zoopla, if Rightmove piss your people off enough, and there's enough of a play where they pull their listings and put them all on Zoopla, the consumer will find those listings.
Yeah, that's
it's only a matter of time. Yeah. The consumer will, they'll talk. The consumer will be out there actively looking, and hey Simon, did you see that property on Zoopla? Oh, well, I'm on Rightmove. Well, it's not on Rightmove. So it's really back to the industry to control it.
The problem you've got there, then, Hutch, is that you've got, obviously, you did mention there that you've been their sales teams, and guys over here, the agents over here, regularly talk about having created their own Frankenstein by being that sales team. And the problem is they've done it so well now that Rightmove is a verb. You know, it is a search term for, like you Google for anything, you Rightmove for property. So that ain't going to disappear overnight, you know, in the public's mind. So whilst I agree, and by the way, there are small pockets that have done it, and they haven't suffered at all. You know, moved away from Rightmove. In all intensive purposes, we've had some clients down in South Wales that, you know, that found that they managed to, you're quite right, they managed to find the listings and in a very quick fashion. But I think you've still got that brand problem, haven't you? That over the course of the last decade, 15 years, it is ingrained into the public.
I think at the moment, I think the answer to that is, at the moment, it's an industry issue. And right now, because of the lockdown, the messages that we as agents are communicating to our clients have to be tempered. So we're not doing anything salesy at the moment. We're not really pushing for new business as much as we should do, because it's seen as being the wrong time to do that. So instead, there's a lot of kind of community support stuff going on, and there's a lot of keeping in touch with vendors, but we haven't yet kind of moved up a gear and said, right, we can see the end of this, so let's now start launching stuff. Well, and I think when we get back to business as usual and we start having those conversations with our clients, that will be the first time that clients know anything different has changed with Rightmove. Because right now, this is all happening in a vacuum. They don't know anything about it.
Look, I think at the end of the day, there's probably bigger fish to fry right at the moment. So you talk about the client, you talk about the client journey, and I think, you know, if I look at the approach we took when this thing hit, you made the comment before, is there going to be significant change, you know, post COVID-19? I think there'll be subtle change, but I think the client's still the client, and the client still wants vitamin C. They want that connection piece. So, you know, if I look at some of the things that we put in place at the start, and some of the things that I see will go forward, is these Zoom meetings and the commonplace of them has allowed us to I suppose, communicate better with our teams more consistently and regularly.
Yeah.
You know, like to give you an idea what we did for the first few weeks, we were doing a directions meeting in the morning. So, you know, basically looking at where are your next 5 listings, where are your next 5 deals coming from, who are the 5 people that you need to call today to get some leverage. You know, what didn't we get done yesterday that we need to get done today? And what do we need to get done today? Basically, you know, the goal is today.
Totally controllable tasks, essentially.
Yeah. Yep. So we're doing that, and then we're having a loop back meeting with the team at the end of the day. So, you know, my day was consisting of, you know, first up a sales directions meeting, then a PM directions meeting, and then later in the day a loop back meeting just to see what were the wins for the day, guys. So we were lucky compared to you guys. We were lucky. We could still do a private inspection. We could still take people through to inspect properties. Yeah. So we were lucky, barring Easter, when all of a sudden we have a body over here called Consumer Affairs, which is a government-run body. Yeah. They come out at 4:55 on Good Friday Eve and said no inspections moving forward. No more inspections. That's it, done. Unless the house is vacant.
Even though you're what do they call it, key workers, essential workers, that bit was taken out of the okay.
So any property that had someone living in it, we couldn't inspect. Okay. They then did an about face come the Monday. So look, I suppose our whole narrative was we're humans first and we're agents second. So that was the narrative we put out first place. So we're having a lot of communication with our vendors, our prospective vendors, and it was all around, hey, how are you going? Is there anything we can do to help? Yeah. You know, so I think even through this time, if I look at you guys being locked down, I think now is a great time to be having that conversation with people. You know, we're here, we're still here. How are you coping? You know, get around people because people want that vitamin connect.
I think that's a really good point. Hutch, we only got another 5 minutes, and I want you to explain to David the model behind. Obviously, we do have franchising over here, but it's nothing like the degree over there. Could you talk through, there's going to be a lot of people reimagining their businesses though over here. So we've got the likes of Keller Williams that are trying to introduce, broker models, and, there's other derivations that are more closely resembling what you guys do. Can you talk through how it actually works from both both from the valuer's point of view, what commission they can earn, what split there is for the business, and how that works in terms of the whole franchise model from your perspective? And you can reference other agencies if you want to.
Yeah, certainly. So, look, we're a franchise body, and we have offices in multiple suburbs right across Melbourne now. So, 27 offices. Basically, our guys, there's a couple of ways they get paid as agents, or what do you call them over there?
Yeah, agents. Yeah.
Agents, yeah. So, there's a couple of different ways. We do commission only here.
Yeah.
So, commission only. And look, I'll reference back to Josh. Josh's whole philosophy is that a business should be insanely profitable, because we've got to innovate and we've got to invest back in our people. So it's not only about, there's a lot of models here where and quite frankly, they're not doing that well, where they pay incredibly high commission splits. And, they're not coping well and they're not doing well. But, we look at a commission-only sort of scenario where there's no salary involved, where hypothetically...
So somebody joining you doesn't even get like a holiday while they build their pipeline. They have to hit the floor running. Yeah,
in different scenarios, yes. Okay. Here in Victoria, we cannot put anyone on commission-only unless they've been able to prove that they can earn 125% of a minimum wage.
Okay. Right.
So if you've worked in the industry... Yeah, so minimum wage, call it 40-odd thousand. I think the criteria is about 54,000 in income in the last 12 months before they can go on commission only. So what we do there is put them on a debit credit scenario. So minimum wage plus car allowance and phone allowance. And then, basically they get a smaller commission split. So look, commission splits here, they range commission only 50%, 50%, 60%-ish. Some of the businesses, there's some sort of broker models where they can work from home and earn a lot more, but they're struggling. They're really struggling. And the other thing I've noticed is, sorry mate, the other thing I've noticed is, I got my team straight back into the office straight after Easter, because I found they were sitting in bed. We're doing a directions meeting at 9 o'clock. They're on my dime. They're sitting in bed having Cocoa Pops, and there was no seriousness about it. So. We had the social distancing, we had the bigger office, and I said, right guys, tomorrow morning we're back in the office, we're doing our directions meetings in the office, we're doing our loop backs in the office, we're going to socially distance, we're going to keep our distance. Yeah. And, we've gone from looking at having a shit month to having a relatively good month. So to give you an idea, my office, we sold 5 last week and we listed 12. So, and that was about having the people back in the office.
What would that be the percentage of in a normal market?
Sorry, mate?
What percentage how does that reflect to a normal market? What would you have listed and sold in a normal week?
Look, for that little office, we work on somewhere around 18 to 20 listings a month. Okay. And, if we can do 12 to 13 sales a month, we're happy with that. But it was looking horrible until I got them back in the office. So, one thing I've really gleaned out of this is that people want to be around good people, and good people, doing deals and cutting deals drive the others to the next level.
That's really interesting. How do you stop in that model what you just described there, the Cocoa Pops thing, apart from it being a one-off? How do you stop people who just treat it as a lifestyle? Famously, the Americans, I think they've got 1 million realtors, and on average, they sell between 3 or 4 a year, because there's so many of them once they've got their realtor's license. They literally will go to dinner parties and things with their friends. Somebody mentions they're going to sell it. Oh, I've got my realtor's license. Pop it on the MLS and sell it and get the lovely fat chunky 6% fee if they represent both buyer and seller. But how do you stop in your model, given that there is obviously so much commission there, those people that are actually, again, just okay getting by with whatever? Is it all about just getting the right attitude? Or do you have the ability to say you've got to hit a minimum number of listings?
Oh, look, we track consistently we track their KPIs. So, MAPs, BAPs and LAPs. I'm sure Josh has trained your guys over there on market appraisals. buyer appointments and lapse being listing appointments. So, we track that. We're very big on trying to make sure the guys have got minimum 3 appointments a day, 15 a week, 60 a month. So as directors and business owners, we track that pretty heavily. The other thing is, I think it comes back to your value, your value set that we have, and one of them is realising potential. So if Simon comes to me and says, look, Darren, I've got a yearning, I want to earn $100,000 a year, that gets me by, and that's good for the business. So our key then is to see that we can get Simon to that level. I suppose we've got we're an amazing culture within our business, and that's probably the most important thing to us. So, we want people that are prepared to work, and look, the way things are here, at the end of the day, it's not hard to get above minimum wage. It's not hard to get to a sizable sort of an income. I'd love to have an Alexander Phillips in the business. I'd love to have a Matty Hastings in the business, or whatever the case is. But I think that terminology, high performance, is such a small percentage of the real estate market.
Yeah, absolutely. They're all rock star agents, are they, as they would be christened?
But it's, for me, it's more about seeing people get to where they want to get to, realising their potential, and quite frankly, if I suppose from our perspective, if they're going to sit in the bed eating Cocoa Pops in the morning and not be proactive and productive, well, they can go somewhere else and do that.
We'll just finish with this question, if that's all right, Hutch. What would somebody starting then with yourselves, what would they expect to earn if they hit the floor running with you in their first year?
Look, probably one of the best starts I've seen was Paul Rogers. You've met Paul. He would have earned $75,000 to $80,000 Aussie in his first 12 months. It can take a while for them to get themselves going, and realistically, to get to a sizable income, it can be 18 months to 2 years. But there's been instances where we've had people within 2 years that have earned 250, 300 grand.
Yeah. We're gonna get Hutch back on the show, because
of course we are.
I've got more questions for this fella. It's been very fascinating, because there is one other thing that we've not covered yet, which is that there's a big sort of difference in the way that you guys list and sell houses in terms of the sale process. We have a whole other way of looking at it over here. So we have a whole sort of sales progression business as well. So if you don't mind, we'll get you back on again.
I'd love to, David. I'd love to talk to you about our Super Saturday of auctions coming up this weekend too, and what we're doing there. So, so if you want to do that later in the week, I'm more than happy to. But do me a favour. When Simon sent me the invite, it was for 5 o'clock in the morning here, and there's only 2 people in the country that are out of bed at 5 o'clock in the morning, and that's Josh Fegan and Tom Panos.
Yeah. So, well, we're getting him from the nightclub, aren't we? Hutch, love you, mate. Thank you very much. That's been fantastic. We will get you back on, and thanks for taking your time.
Pleasure, guys. Have a great
Take care,
day.
Bye bye.
Thanks all. Cheers. Bye bye.
All the best. See you, boys.